So, got it. So my professional art journey was a bit of a weird one because I pivoted pretty hard. I worked in television for a long time, for almost a decade, and I'd always done art on my own. It was the first thing I was ever good at, and it wasn't until I met In Flames and they gave me a shot. They said, hey, you know, try out this comic book, and you know, then ultimately let me do album covers that I was like, oh man, maybe I kind of have a knack for this. I like it. And In Flames then opened the door for me to do art for movies and television. That's what led to me getting that job. So it was really strange. It was this, you know, I had a career. It was a real challenging but obviously beneficial move to pivot and make art my sole focus, which once I did it, it made perfect sense. It's like, well, why wasn't I doing this the whole time? But you know, that's what our journeys are. You know, you can have a planned life, and then life is what happens in between those plans, you know. So I ended up, I think, exactly where I needed to, and I'm very fortunate that I now get to do art for my friends, basically, and I get to work with people I want to work with, and it's a dream. Album art is the most rich, varied, most beautiful set of art you can think of. So whenever I work with bands, I try to do my research and, you know, figure out like, what is this about? Like, what have they said with these covers? We have to do a cover that's very different than the last one. And just like working on a film, you know, you want to do, it may be Spider-Man 28. It has to look unique compared to what came before. So, you know, you try to do that as best you can. At least I try to. Working on Foregone was kind of a new experience. It was, there was a different energy about this one. Post-pandemic, there was an enthusiasm to do this. We missed each other. We wanted to hang out. You know, they rented a house just close to here, so we got to hang out like on the regular, and we would barbecue, and then we would talk. It was a very breezy way of kind of getting into it. It was very comfortable. And then, you know, it was the dream for an artist because I got to hear the demos. I got to hear the riffs first, and Anders would be like, oh, this is a chorus I've got, but I don't know. I got to hear the chorus for Meet Your Maker 2 years ago, and I was like, this song, this is my favorite. I love it. And it still is. Meet Your Maker is my favorite song on the record, just personally for me. We talked about Dio. We talked about all of these. We wanted this to be that record that when you're a kid flipping through in the vinyl shop, you're like, what's that? You know, I got to see what's up with that. And then you open it up and there is this whole story inside. You know, it really, we want that gratifying experience. You know, I try to put myself in the mind of like, okay, I'm a fan. I am a fan. You know, what would really turn me on reading this, you know? And that's what we strive for. That's what we try to do. Eye the Mask, interestingly enough, and this does tie into Forgone, you know, Eye the Mask I feel like is where we kind of hit our sweet spot creatively. That's where we all got to be good friends, like on a personal level. We hung out a lot. We got to know each other. You know, I invited Anders over to watch Roadhouse, and I was like, well, this could go either way. You know, he could be like, I don't ever want to hang out with these nerds again, or this could be fun. And we ended up having just the best fucking time. So on Eye the Mask, when that relationship kind of got to that point, you know, I think I'd shown them an early sketch of the little Jester kid, and Eye the Mask came from that art. The art inspired ultimately what came from that. So it was kind of a neat thing for me. They were like, oh, your art inspired the lyrics to this song. And I was like, what? Wow, cool. Like, that's just such a neat thing. I don't really get that with a lot of clients. You know, it's usually you're just this guy on the other end of the email and you send the work and you hope people like it and that's it. You don't generally get that proper feedback from the horse's mouth, you know? So on Forgone, it was kind of the same formula, you know, like I was making art constantly. I was making art before a lot of lyrics were written because I wanted to inspire, you know. In fact, we had a cover that no one will ever see that we were sitting on for 3 months that we thought was it. It was a completely different concept. And then lyrically, it started to kind of take a turn and it was less about that original concept and more about this sort of time thing. The cover is very much forward-facing the theme of the record. Absolutely, it's kind of front and center, but Eye the Mask also was too. I still think, to me personally, the booklet art for Eye the Mask is some of the more interesting work I've done. There was a lot of creative things that happened in that I was really proud of, and with Forgone, I really wanted to do that again, hopefully, and use that same formula to try to do it, you know, bigger and better. You know, I'm hopefully a better artist than I was 5 years ago, and you know, they're making music that's different than they wanted to make 5 years ago. And there is an element of artistic joy that lives in the hearts, especially of Bjorn and Anders. And I think that love of the medium, of just the music of the whole process really comes through. And even though this is a very aggressive record, and I think it was needed. I think it was a cathartic record just in general for people.
The evolution from Jester Kid to this monstrous figure.
Mm-hmm.
Is there connections there?
Yeah.
What's the connections between Eye the Mask and Foregone?
Well, I always looked at, again, these were two records made at very different times, and Eye the Mask, I always looked at, to me, that was where the wild things are. There was an Alice in Wonderland, almost storybook kind of subtext to that whole visual story for Eye the Mask, whereas on Forgone, that character was meant to be the devil. It was meant to be the evil. It was meant to be that thing that stole all of that from us. That was meant to visually represent that anger and that frustration we all felt. So this was a malicious character, whereas I felt like the Eye the Mask character was very much an innocent character that wore the trappings of evil to navigate that world, which I always connected with metal fans. We wear our black t-shirts and we wear our face makeup and we wear our leather jackets to feel part of this community. We dress up like these monsters that our parents were so scared of at the time. We grow our hair long and we live in that culture, and it's a beautiful, supportive, and actually really incredible culture. And I always thought that, we all have a mask. The mask we wear in public, the mask we wear around our friends, whatever it is, and that theme, we got pretty deep into that, and that really, I'm a jester that wants to be set free, that kind of idea was really, really captivating to me when we did that record. And then on this one, it's kind of just like the flip of that. It is the anger, it is the nightmare that it was, and there's some really hopeful songs on the record, actually, which is kind of cool. And I think that juxtaposition, to me, that's always been my formula for In Flames. That's what I always saw their music as before I was doing art for them. It was this combination of innocence and sort of destruction. I did a piece of art for a tour, and I wish I'd known it was being used that way, because I thought it was really cool, and we probably could have done an album cover with it. But it was like a silhouette of this kid holding balloons in front of this almost like amusement park mouth, shaped like the Jester skull, and it was really horrifying. I was like, that's what In Flames is. It's a very hard on your sleeve kind of music, and it really does juxtapose innocence versus kind of aggression. Battles was a different thing. It was the second record I did for the band. We didn't know each other as well then. We were friendly. I would see them on tour, we would hug and say hi, maybe have a beer, but we got along great. Again, I was just stoked that they asked me to do it again. I'd done Siren Charms, and they were kind enough to say, hey, would you want to do this one too? And I was like, well, fuck yeah, man, of course I want to do that one. With In Flames, I try to put a cover on every page of the booklet. There's a new piece of art, and I want there to be a consistency through all of it. I want the fans to see that. I want it to feel like a robust... It's so funny because they have so much more confidence in me than I have in myself. They're like, oh, Blake's gonna figure it out. And I'm just like sweating, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I hope so. Seeing my artwork in Times Square, I've had my artwork in Times Square now, I think twice, with Ready Player One and with In Flames, which to me, Spielberg and In Flames. How do you even begin to describe the joy in that? And again, for all of those kinds of things, there's 10,000 things that just absolutely did not work and fell completely flat. So I don't want anyone to think like, oh wow, yeah, it's so much luck and happenstance and just good timing and all of that stuff. It feels incredible. Those guys, again, because we connect so much as friends, hey, what about an action figure? Hey, what about a comic? Hey, what about this? I think your music supports these things. I don't think it's like a cash grab. It doesn't feel disingenuous to do this. I think your fans are going to feed into this a little bit because I am your fan. I am your fan base to some degree. So I have some insight into that. And then of course, we like all the same stuff. We nerd out about the toys and the guitars and the posters and all of that stuff. So, when I get to do that, when we get to kind of tailor that for the band, it's just we're all just laughing it up and just enjoying it. It's what a gift, It's a trip, man. You never get used to it. I've been doing this for, better part of 10 years, and I still don't get used to it. It doesn't feel real. All of the things you're seeing on these records and on these movie posters happen in this room. It's just me in here and my cat, and me, mainlining coffee and, talking to my mom on FaceTime. And then all of a sudden, that thing you were doing when you were talking to your mom is on a billboard. Or, you know, one of the greatest experiences I ever had, I mean, the first time the band flew me to Sweden, they were really sweet, and it was during the Siren Charms era. They were like, oh, why don't you come out and you need to see it, like, you need to see some of the European shows, was kind of the idea. They were like, you know, North America, we don't get to do our full production, so why don't you come and see the full production and see what that's like. It could be inspiring and cool, and it was a good chance for me to meet them and all of that stuff. So they flew me to Stockholm. I'm on the train from Arlanda, from the airport, and my art is on the train for the record. Because it was promoting the show they were doing, and I probably had $8 in the bank. You know, like, I'm this broke artist that's there on the generosity of this sweet band that's taking me out, and I was just like, wow, man, like, that just to me, I mean, just thinking about it kind of gets me emotional, because it was just I sold these guys records at Hot Topic, you know, like, it was just such a eye-opening and wonderful thing, and they're just like, yeah, and we're gonna do it again, you know? And it's beautiful, and I'm so fortunate, grateful, and lucky that I get to do that cool work with people that cool, and, you know, that we connect with on that level. And then they've opened me up to doing artwork for other bands that I love. You know, it's their generosity and their kind of taking a chance on a random dude in LA has led me to work with, you know, Megadeth and Slayer and Kataklysm and, you know, Carnifex and all of these bands that have just been a joy. You know, it's been incredible. Around Siren Charms, Andreas Verling, who is a brilliant artist, he had done this sort of simplified Jester symbol. So that would kind of, yeah, you'd have that stamped in there a little bit, but as you say, there was no out front kind of mascot. And, you know, it was always kind of a half-baked idea, I feel like. They're like, yeah, we need a mascot, but and I know they wore the patches and the shirts in kind of the early days and things like that, but there was never really a story attached to it. There was never really like you know, Eddie was this main character on the cover of every record, so it just sort of intrinsically worked for everything, and they would change his clothes and the time period. It became this historical thing, just like, you know, Vic Rattlehead was on the Megadeth records and all of that stuff. It was very much a continuation of that. So I had basically said to them, I was like, well, you guys have this mascot. Like, why don't let's do something with it, you know, let's make it. And that's what I the Mask was creating this kind of story around this. And to me, the Jester head, and the comic book touches on this in a much bigger way, is eternal. It is representational of many things and takes on many forms and can kind of exist. Whereas Eddie is historical, the Jester's interdimensional. It exists, it's sort of in the multiverse. So that's why you can have a Forgone Jester that is essentially death, and why you can have an I the Mask character where the Jester is essentially a hero, a little, you know, again, the Where the Wild Things Are kid. You know, he's like trying to achieve, you know, he's Alice in Wonderland, like wandering through this world trying to find his place. You know, I tend to think of I the Mask and Foregone as kind of sister records in my mind. Just the style is kind of similar. You can definitely see me in both of them very strongly, and that's just kind of what the Jester has meant to me. So kind of giving it a backstory. And the comic book we're about to put out with the Jester's Curse is very much literally the backstory. Like, what is the Jester head? Where does it come from? Where's it going? And what's it all about?